Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Indiana on the road playing Notre Dame, round one of the college football playoffs, the battle of the state of Indiana. And Dill, you look at this Indiana team, I don't think a ton of people knew just how good they were to start the 2024 year. And I certainly was one of them that looked at them and said, I don't know if they're one of the best teams in all of college football. And every single week, as you put teams across them, they didn't just win, like they were dominating. Now, the storyline heading into this football game is what was the one game, really two games, Dill, that we saw Indiana struggle. It was against teams like Ohio State and Michigan, teams that had just different caliber athletes, especially along the line of scrimmage. I would put Notre Dame in that category as well. So can Indiana have a rebound performance playing one of these upper echelon college football programs that are different along the line of scrimmage on the road in a hostile environment? That's probably the biggest storyline that we see. Fired up to get into this one now. Before we do, and as always, Indiana fans, Notre Dame fans, college football fans, let it fly in the comment section. A lot of different takes to be had about this football game. Appreciate all the support y'all showing the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, let's start with this Notre Dame offense. And this is going to catch a lot of people off guard. Notre Dame, where they rank in scoring offense. Number 3 in the country, scoring 39.8 points per game. Coach Denbrock's come in, and it's nothing crazy. What I really think they're doing is just leaning into the personnel they have on this offense. You look at the offensive line. They're not bad in pass protection, but they're certainly better run blockers, so they're running the football a lot. They got two extremely good backs. One of the storylines for Notre Dame heading into 2024 is how do you replace a guy like Audric Estime? Well, you do it with guys like Jeremiah Love and Price. Jeremiah Love, this might be a top 5 running back in all of football. And obviously what Riley Leonard can do with his legs. And then they're marrying the run game with the passing attack. This isn't a offense where you're asking Riley Leonard to throw the football 50 times a game and put the team on his back, but you're leaning into what he does well, getting him outside the pocket, short intermediate passing range. Here's the question, Dell. Indiana, 2.6 yards per carry allowed on defense. That's number 2 in the country. Notre Dame wants to run the football. Indiana has been extremely good stopping the run, but this is a little bit of a different animal with this Notre Dame rushing attack. How do you see that matchup playing out here?
And I think the thing I look at is Indiana's done a really good job of confusing offensive lines. You see how active they are. They run a lot of stunts. They run a lot of games. And that's a double-edged sword. I think why that number is so good. A lot of it has to do with creating a lot of negative backs, TFLs, all those things. But when you run those kind of games, if you will, you certainly give the opportunity for an offense to crease you. Ohio State was able to hit them with a couple of them. And I look at Notre Dame. They've been really good doing that. They did it against Texas A&M. They've done it pretty much consistently all year. And that's pretty much how Notre Dame's been able to manufacture explosiveness. It's not like their passing attack is explosive at all. But that rushing attack, as much as they can grind you into the ground, they can be really explosive in that.
Jeremiah Love's a guy that's averaging 7 yards per carry, was a 10-6 guy coming out of high school in the 100-meter dash. Like, he has that home run capability, and you've seen it routinely to start 2024. Dill, that's a really good point. You look at that matchup. Is Indiana able to create more negative plays and limit the explosive runs, or does Notre Dame win that battle? Because you're absolutely right. Indiana's going to do a lot of activity up front. And there's going to be some opportunities to hit some big plays. Can Notre Dame capitalize on that? That's kind of where it starts. And to me, it really does start with getting this Notre Dame team off schedule. They've been extremely good staying on schedule. They don't take a lot of negative plays. They're not putting Riley Leonard in a lot of these third and long situations. Can Indiana put Notre Dame in those spots? That's probably where it comes down to, because you look at Indiana in the secondary, 5.8 yards per pass attempt given up. That's number 9 in the country? It's a very good secondary. The key in the passing attack for me is yards after the catch, because Indiana's going to give you some of that stuff underneath. They'll give you a 62% completion percentage, which is 92nd in the country. But they're going to come up and tackle. Can Notre Dame get the playmakers in space, and then can those playmakers operate after the catch? if Notre Dame's having success in the passing attack, that's to me what it probably looks like.
And that's what I wonder how Indiana plays this. Because again, I think where they can get after this Notre Dame team is with the pass rush. That's
Yes.
probably the one issue with that Notre Dame offensive line is
Yeah.
you've seen good pass rushes be able to do some things. Now they're really good in the run. They're really physical. So it's like kind of odd that you got a one part of the game they excel at, one part of the game they're not particularly great at. But Riley Leonard, as you said, like has been able to take that part of the defense or take that frankly away from a lot of defenses.
Well, how they take it away is because they run the ball so much. There's a very limited opportunity for you to really get good pass rush opportunities.
He's sharp. In fairness to Riley Leonard, the ball does not stay in his hands very long. And if it is staying in his hands, he's very quick to tuck it down and run. And that's like kind of the things. You're not seeing a ton of sacks. You're seeing them stay on schedule, and they can play their game. Now, Indiana, that's why I wonder how they're going to play coverage, essentially, and what that secondary is going to look like, because they play kind of a soft zone a fair amount of the game. And I think that kind of does play into a little bit of what Riley Leonard can do is pick that apart. Now, I think if you challenge these wide receivers, I frankly think the Indiana secondary is good. I think those are really talented players led by Pounds. I wonder if they can play a little bit more man and be aggressive and essentially try to make Riley Leonard beat him down the field a little bit, because that is where I don't think.
Yeah, challenge these pass catchers. Like if there's one, I don't know if I'd use the word flaw, but question mark we have about Notre Dame being an elite team in college football, it's those pass catchers on the outside. Can Indiana say, hey, we're going to take away the run. We're going to put another safety in the box. We're going to play maybe a little press man, take away the quick stuff, and force you to push the ball down the field? That could be an answer. You could talk all the X's and O's you want. Notre Dame's going to try to play their way. Indiana's going to try to stop the run. If Notre Dame can get the run game going, it's pretty hard to see Indiana winning this football game, because that kind of plays right into what Notre Dame wants to do. They'll flip in the sides here. Indiana offense, 40.3 points per game. That's number 2 in the country. So you're looking at the number 2, number 3 scoring offenses in the country going at it here. But they're playing a defense that's just it's Michigan's defense, it's Ohio State's defense, and Notre Dame's defense. And you saw Indiana's offense struggle against Ohio State. They struggled against Michigan. Does Indiana struggle again against an elite caliber defense with just different type of bodies? And that's kind of where it starts for me.
Because Notre Dame, Michigan's got a good defensive line. Notre Dame's a far more complete unit than Michigan. I look at that secondary.
Yeah, I'd probably
much better than Michigan's secondary and how sound they play. They don't give up a ton. And again, that to me, it really does start with if Notre Dame's pass rush can be dominant. And it wasn't, frankly, dominant last time we saw it against USC. That's not a great pass protecting unit. I don't think Notre Dame did enough. Now, I think a guy like Howard Cross, and I don't know that anyone yet knows exactly.
I think he's going to be back, from what I read.
Well, if he's going to be back, that's huge, because he's their big dog, if you will. He's a guy who can be really disruptive. When him and Mills, as you said, are on the field together, I think that can be a real problem, because at the end of the day, the problem with Indiana is when they have time to play, it doesn't matter kind of how good your coverage has been, because their guys are so good at making plays with ball in the air, and Curtis Rourke puts the ball where it needs to be put. So it's just not a ton of defense for perfect offense. You've been able to play that way.
If you can't disrupt Indiana along the line of scrimmage, it's such a hard, because they just execute. It's probably the highest executing offense, the best execution offense that you see in the country. How do you get them to not execute? The only 2 defenses that we've seen give Indiana trouble are defenses that can dominate the line of scrimmage, Ohio State and Michigan. Like, Michigan ain't that good of a team, but they got a good defensive line, and that they gave Indiana some problems specifically in that second half. One thing, a massive shout out to Marcus Freeman. This whole team has endured a ton of injuries, but in that secondary, they've had some really good football players go down, and they just replenish. This is becoming one of those programs. It's like plug and play. Like, whoever they got going back there is developed and ready to rock and roll. It's an extremely hard defense to crack. And there's a reason it's a top 3 scoring defense in the country and only giving up 4.5 yards per play, which is top 5. Defensive line, backers, secondary. There's no really weakness. Indiana's going to have to execute. It comes down to this Notre Dame defensive line. Can you get Curtis Rourke off his spot? We know he's not great as an athlete. He's not great extending plays. If you let him sit in a clean pocket, he's going to have success.
Another note is I think the linebackers are good working on the blitz. Jack Kaiser, Viliamo Asau, those guys have been good when they've been asked to blitz. When you look at what Ohio State was able to do, that Indiana team,
they were just yeah,
their back. Indiana had no answer. Their offensive line looked confused. So I imagine Marcus Freeman and Al Golden are going to give Indiana a dosage of that because, again, I think they have the athletes on the boundary to hold up in those one-on-one situations. And if they can get after that team, you see how kind of off the rails Indiana's offense.
Yeah, those overload pressures that Ohio State threw at Indiana, it gave them some serious problems. Let's get into the pick here. Indiana, 8-point dogs on the road. I'll start. I'll take Indiana, keep this close. This is a team that I've doubted all year. And this is a team that a lot of people like to point to that Ohio State game and say they can't hang with the big dogs. That might be true, but it also might be true that game just on the road against a really good football team that played really well that afternoon, it got away from them. Go to that first drive where you scripted up and that Indiana team looked like they were going to win that football game for the first quarter. I think that game was more of a result of it just getting off the rails on the road against a really good team, and you made some crucial mistakes and it got ugly, than Indiana not being able to compete at the highest level of the sport.
I look at that game, I think you need to have answers for what Ohio State was doing. And there got to a point in that game where they had zero answers. It didn't matter. Ohio State was going to blitz the linebackers. They were going to get home. They were going to force sacks. And it kind of crippled that. Indiana had nothing in response to it. That's the only issue. So I think Notre Dame kind of has the blueprint to what they need to do. I think they have the personnel to do it. I think they can take care of this.
That's my question is, do they have that defensive line that can dominate up front? I think they do, but you kind of said it, that there was an underwhelming performance from them against USC. Look, I think Notre Dame, they're probably be my pick to win it, but give me Indiana to keep this one close. I think everybody likes to look at that one Ohio State game was ugly. The rest of this season, man, I think Indiana's been so good, and it is such a pretty offense to watch when they have time and you give Curtis Rourke a clean pocket. You're on Notre Dame. I'm on Indiana. It's the first game we disagreed with in terms of playoff picks. We'll see how it works out. It's a Friday night game, too. Fire me up for that. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.